Hey everyone, welcome to Geek Rant, and today we're going to be talking about 5 great things about the Acolyte. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. It's Greg here again on the channel with Toby, and today we're going to be talking about 5 great things about the Acolyte. Obviously, we did a review recently, which we actually got some good comments. So we thought we'd follow it up with a bit of a discussion about our 5 favorite things about the Acolyte. Okay, so something that we were both really pleased about was the fact that the fight scenes were a lot more the style that we prefer, I suppose, is a way to describe it. Obviously, in the first episode, there was a good sort of hand-to-hand combat between May and Inara. And then in the very end of the series, we had that great battle between Sol and I can remember the character's name, the Dark
Chimera.
Chimera.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so your feelings about it?
I mean, the fact of the matter is, with these fights, they tried to do something a little bit different. They incorporated a style, and we touched on this before. And I think that these are like really important moments in a series like this. You get to feel the character of these particular figures that are fighting, and we instantly knew something about May through the way that she was fighting. The fact that it was an untamed approach to the fight. It was kind of rough, and she was like using weapons and the Force. And also there was that combination of wire work where she was kind of jumping up over the banister onto that mezzanine level.
Yeah.
So we had immediately that it set up a kind of a rough image of the Force against a very controlled image of the Force, which of course was Carrie-Anne Moss as Indara. And that was particularly interesting because she was extremely controlled.
Yeah. We said it before, didn't we? It had the sort of shades of her style when she was in the Matrix, and
definitely
very much just sort of stepping back and out the way of the moves, and it worked quite well, didn't it? I mean, she carries that off pretty well. When I obviously saw that, and obviously she loses that battle, I was feeling a bit disappointed that we weren't going to see much more of her character, but she does pop up again.
She does.
But definitely in that first scene, I did actually feel it was quite nicely laid out. The scene, the scenario was good. The tavern sort of environment was good,
which looked fantastic.
That looked really good. The couple of little bits that I was when she says, "Oh, attack me with all your strength," and that sort of. I thought that was a bit,
Well, that again for me, and this will come up in this video. That is a direct reference to traditional the first Star Wars films. That is exactly the sort of thing. I am the master. Attack me with all your strength. It's kind of like there's a bold statement to it. They're kind of cheesy, and I think that people forget a lot of the original Star Wars is just fairy tale stuff, and there's quite a few cheesy lines in the original Star Wars films.
Definitely,
and that is riffing off those films and nothing else. None of the other series.
But I think for me, those original ones just had a lot more sort of realism about the fighting. It wasn't all really clean, and everything was a bit of a battle. Rather than
I think that we get that in the Acolyte as well,
and that's what I'm saying. I think there is a bit more of that in the Acolyte, and that was pleasing. There's a good bit where, when she says that, the characters around Indara sort of laugh, don't they? And they start fighting her, or she attacks them. And there's some good little maneuvers there where she sort of throws a few people over, and she kicks a table over, and those sorts of bits. And then suddenly you have, like you say, that very controlled approach from Indara, who steps in and grabs her, doesn't she? and they have that good bit of, obviously Indara doesn't want to kill her. She's trying to subdue her,
Mm.
to disarm her, and which ultimately leads to her sort of downfall.
Yeah, well, it's a dirty trick, isn't it, from
Yes,
May? You
yes,
know, it's
it
the
is. Yeah,
kill the innocent bystander
yeah,
routine,
yeah, yeah.
which is absolutely
Which is what a
fine.
Jedi would do. They would try and protect the
Yeah,
innocent, wouldn't they? They would try and
and
protect those people.
yeah, and in that moment, we are seeing
Mm.
the narrative of the entire series played out in a little capsule of
Yeah,
really kind of fast-paced entertainment. We get an immediate sense of what is going to come,
yeah.
you know. And I think that people don't seem to give it that much credit. There's a lot of criticism.
No, I
They
thought,
complain about the storyline, they complain about the narrative. When the fights
yeah,
are driven to kind of tell a story, and they talk during the fights. Apart from May's quite a quiet character anyway, but you know
well,
that's a very traditional thing.
there's some bits where she says, Jedi, where she Indara had sort of said, "We Jedi don't attack unarmed," and she says, "Yes, you do," and it's very
Yeah,
much
again,
showing her anger towards the Jedi. Obviously, she's misunderstood how it later transpires, but
yeah,
um, I think that was definitely good. Like you're saying, the wire work
mm,
was good. How they
mm,
get up on the balcony and there's
mm,
that exchange up there. Yeah, I think that was really well done.
yeah,
And then obviously, I mean, the other main fight that we were really impressed with. I know there was a fight in the middle where they're in the jungle and they're sort of
yeah,
fighting, but they don't really focus very well on that, do they? There's a bit of that, and there's a lot
yeah,
of the sort of characters around who are sort of either running away or trying to get back into the fight or other bits and pieces going on.
yeah.
It's okay.
Jackie Lon, the character,
Yeah,
dies in that
that's
sequence.
right.
The
Yeah,
last thing to
it's
happen in that sequence, and she
yeah.
has a really good little sequence where
That's
she
true.
fights.
That's
You
true.
know,
There is a good bit where she's battling against the stranger, and
yeah,
yeah, obviously she dies, which again I thought was actually gonna a bit of a surprise.
yeah. It's a
That
bold move.
that did surprise me that they'd killed her
Mm,
character off because
mm,
she was one of the Jedi that they'd spent a bit more time with. They were
yeah,
the one of the ones who were trying to develop a bit of a story with,
yeah,
but that got
yeah.
cut short, didn't it?
And that
Um,
is a bold thing to do. You don't see that often in
no,
mainstream kind
you
of Disney
don't.
type products. And
No,
I think that is saying we aren't afraid to throw something unexpected in. And
yeah,
I think the best stories are the ones that you can't necessarily predict.
no.
I think that's one of the things about this show is that people couldn't predict how it was going to go. And when it didn't
No.
go the way they thought it was going to go, everybody started throwing their toys out the pram. You know, I mean,
Do you
it's,
think that's part of it? Do you think that's
yeah,
part
I
of
do.
people's
I do.
thing about it? I mean,
Yeah.
it was, like you say, it was quite a bold thing to do because
Yeah.
they were developing the Soul and the Jackie sort of storylines,
Yeah.
and there's well, pretty much all the Jedi get killed apart from
Yeah.
those that are back on Coruscant, don't they?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an
That's,
interesting approach,
yeah.
considering
But
that
one that we
the
usually
series.
applaud in
Yeah,
shows which are quite radical,
yeah.
like a Game of Thrones, for example, would just kill characters off. Now that was obviously
Oh yeah,
within the original book,
yeah, yeah.
but that was still a really powerful tool. And then of course we get the fight at the end, as you
Yes.
were talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
And the nice thing about that fight, the staging was really good as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So it had an arena,
Yes.
the kind of the ruin that was
That definitely helped, didn't it? It
it
definitely
really
helped.
did. It
Yeah,
really
yeah,
did.
yeah.
And I think
And
that takes courage, you know.
yeah, I thought it was well done. I mean, for me, stuff leading up to it and around it, there was the confusing storyline. There's a few other bits, people are going to say, oh, but when they got down to the battle, it showed the two different styles of the characters, in their
Yeah.
fighting. Like you were saying before,
Mm,
the Sol was very controlled a lot of the time, wasn't he? And he was
mm.
sort of it seemed like it was drawing on like a martial arts type approach to it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the stranger guy, he was more aggressive and I suppose that shows the characters of a Jedi and a Sith, doesn't it? How
Yeah.
the two characters and how they approach these things, you know.
Yeah. One's
Um,
very untamed and
yeah,
raw, and
yeah,
it's allowing that to control him.
yeah.
You very much felt that.
And you the best fight scenes in any Star Wars is where you've got that two characters, they're against each other in a
The yin and
more,
the yang.
yeah, and in a more personal way, you know, there's more of a
Yeah,
personal point there. And it was good
definitely.
because Sol, he had to kind of lose it a bit, didn't he, in the end, to
Yeah,
sort of defeat him, you know. And
yeah,
there's some good maneuvers in there. The bit where they jumped down from that
yeah.
I don't
The
know if it was a
slow-mo.
bridge or I don't know what it was, but it was like
Yeah,
a tunnel, you know, there's a
it's
jump
almost like a
down from
ruined
there.
ship or something, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
it was interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah,
And you know, yeah, definitely. I think they definitely got the fighting style back on a good track, and I'd like to see more of that in other
yeah.
series. And if they do take this forward, you know, it'd be good to have
Let's
some of
hope they
that sort
do.
of back, you know.
Mm.
So when you compare it to some of the fighting that was in some of the original stuff, I mean, we mentioned it in the last series, in our last review.
Yeah.
You know that I always think of Palpatine when he jumps up and attacks and kills those Jedi, and it's like they're not
Or the
even.
recent one with the Obi-Wan and the
Yeah,
Darth Vader
yeah,
Obi-Wan fight. My
yeah.
God, that was embarrassing.
It was, wasn't it?
I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, I mean, the whole
it
series was embarrassing, wasn't it?
yeah, it really was. So they turned that around and they've tried to do something with it, which I think is exciting. And it's a shame that people can't see that they're trying to do stuff with it rather than say, "Oh, it's still crap." You
Yeah,
know, they're
yeah.
trying to do stuff, which
They're
a
trying to do
lot of it
something
is
different, aren't
working.
they? They're trying to do something
Yeah,
different, and that should be commended, shouldn't it?
yeah,
For making that effort. Yeah.
yeah,
Cool. Okay, so we're both quite happy with that aspect of the
yeah,
series. That's good. Okay, so our next point is a sort of general conversation about interpretation of the Force, how the
yeah.
Jedi Council were, you know, and some of the other things they tried to expand within, you know, the use of the Force,
Mm,
how they interpret it. Now, obviously, we've got the witches section as well,
mm,
where they see the Force as a thread.
mm.
You know, I didn't. There's been a lot of about that as well online, isn't there? About oh, they're changing the Force and they're misunderstand and all this sort of thing. And for me, it's not that at all, is it? I think
No,
it's just like it's like another culture, you know, where having a different religion, having a different perspective on it,
yeah.
and I really think that's it's been blown right out of proportion on a lot of these things.
Well, for me, it's simply common sense. I mean, if you think about it,
Hmm.
the galaxy is massive.
Yeah,
Force exists within the galaxy.
yeah, exactly.
People are going to discover the Force who never contact the Jedi, surely.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
and they're going to interpret the Force. If you suddenly discovered that you could move things with push it with your
Yeah,
mind,
yeah,
you would do it, wouldn't you?
yes,
And
exactly.
if it was in your favor
And you
to
wouldn't
allow,
necessarily call it the Force.
no,
You would come up with some way of describing it and
or something that
understanding it.
binds us,
Yeah,
could be the thread, couldn't it? I mean,
yeah,
it kind
yeah,
of makes perfect sense.
yeah,
This, as I said before, I think this is drawing directly on the description that Obi-Wan gives Luke when he first talks about it. When they're
yeah,
sitting in Obi-Wan's little
yeah, yeah,
house on Tatooine, and
yeah.
he's like, he goes, "What is the Force anyway?" And then
Mm,
he explains it, and
yeah,
this is the thread. It's a thing that binds you,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know. And I find I was excited by this concept that there potentially could be like sects of people that have
Yes. Yeah,
interpreted the Force in a different way.
it's just building on the
It makes
universe,
sense.
isn't it? It's
Yeah,
building on the
yeah,
universe. You wouldn't go to millions of different planets and everybody feel exactly the same about everything. That just, I mean, you look at just in the next country in our world, you know,
exactly.
there's a completely different opinion of these things. You know, you go to another
Yeah,
planet, there's going to be a completely different interpretation of these things. You know, so
yeah,
I think but it was nice to also see a few more powers and things like that were slightly different. You
yeah.
know, we saw a force shield, didn't we? And again, we sort of thought, well, that's a possibility. You know, we haven't really I can't remember seeing anything like that in any of the sort of main movies or anything like
Well,
that.
we have seen moments when um, the Force holds things.
Yes, yeah,
So if the Force is stopping something being
from
hit
falling. Yeah,
or
yeah,
falling,
yeah.
or that is a barrier in a sense,
Mm,
isn't it?
mm,
You know, and for me, it just makes perfect sense that someone should have Force.
yeah.
You know, a field, kind of like a
That's,
something that could protect. They project
yeah,
out and it protects them.
yeah.
That does not seem like an
No,
unreasonable development of
no, no,
that.
no,
I think
no.
the thing that a lot of people are concerned about is the fact that this zone of darkness that people get sucked into
Yeah.
when the Jedi, when this force is applied.
So
And
so that to me is the only one that I sort of think, okay, is that because they are witches, and it's more of a power for them,
mm,
rather than a force power? Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean?
mm,
I sort of see it that maybe that's something slightly different, because obviously they could turn into a mist, couldn't they? And go
yeah,
into someone's body. I kind of
yeah,
saw that as they've drawn on some other sort of dark power,
yeah,
that's, I don't know if it's force related or not. And obviously they didn't
yeah.
really explain that, did they?
No,
But again, I think in a universe that massive and what could be seen, there must be other powers. And if there's the force and there's other ways of manipulating things,
I
there
do
must.
wonder whether that was unique to the mother to a certain
Right.
extent, because I feel that the convergence, or whatever it's called,
Yeah.
had somehow changed her
Right.
and May and Oshi, and I think that there's something that is very powerful within them,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I,
and
I, I know what you mean. Maybe
yeah,
being in that location, being part of that,
yeah,
there was that old sort of very wrinkled, prune-faced looking woman
yeah.
who I think maybe she was part of it, as a stronger part of it as
Yeah,
well.
maybe,
An
but
elder that taught them how to do it or something.
yeah, and I think that throughout, there's always been an element of the Jedi getting inside someone else's head, you know.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think like when Obi-Wan does his,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you see
you
that
just
in this
do not
series.
recognize
You see
these
that in
aren't the
this
droids you're
series
looking
as
for,
well. Yeah,
you
you see
know.
that in this series as well, where Sol asks one of the prisoners, the prisoner that Osha had helped. He then
Yes.
gets into and sort of
Yeah.
changes him, doesn't he? So there
Is
is
there the step beyond
maybe.
a visualization of that actually happening to a certain
Mm,
extent, but a more
mm,
powerful form,
mm.
you know?
That's I know, and this is it. Do you think this is do you think this is going to carry on into the next series?
I
The
don't know.
fact
I
that
think that it's going to be quite focused in on
Osha,
her specific powers,
yeah,
whereas I think that that was more the mother's type powers,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah, maybe,
You
yeah,
know, I don't think that. I think that now we're away from the witch covenant. I think we're going to
mm,
see maybe more traditional force powers being
yeah,
honed
yeah.
by Chimera, and
Yes, I think you're right. I think they'll
yeah,
train a bit more like their Sith,
exactly,
or whatever. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Okay,
definitely.
cool. But again, I don't think we should be having a go at someone for trying to do something. And I think they've tried to stay within the boundaries of
Definitely
what the
respectful.
Force respect. Do you know what I mean? Not just doing something
Mm,
crazy. They've
no,
tried to just develop it in a way. I mean, the only thing I sort of feel about that is it's in the past,
yeah.
the main thing. So you'd think if they knew those powers, then would they have had those powers? But they don't. Do you know what I mean? It's I don't know.
There
So
is that element to it, but I
yeah.
do think that these are the sort of things that are going to die
Mm,
with this
mm,
covenant.
yeah.
I think that this is their form of force
Yes.
manipulation,
No, I think you're right. I
and
think you're
I
right.
just don't think it goes
Now that
forward.
they're
And
all
I
gone.
can't
Yeah.
imagine that May's going to have a happy ending.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so whatever the case, I don't have a problem with that. When the problem that I had was back in episode 1, when suddenly we saw a transformed force powers, where suddenly they were like jumping 500 meters in the air,
Yeah.
and just fighting like lunatics. Than when their bodies wouldn't have allowed for that to actually happen.
Yeah.
No, it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense.
No.
But this, for me, I can I can see that
you can get on board with this a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so the third thing that we wanted to talk about was some of the characters that we thought were a bit more interesting. I would say that the ones that we sort of identified 3, didn't we? That we thought were Indara, Kelnaka, and Jeki, and unfortunately, they didn't get a lot of airtime, did they? This is part of the problem.
Yeah.
These for me, Indara, I think partly because it was Carrie-Anne Moss who was playing the part,
definitely
made a huge difference to it. She conveyed real elegance and control, and had a really good Jedi feel about her, actually.
She did.
And I thought it was a shame they couldn't have utilized her more through the series, just in the flashbacks and right at the beginning. That was just a shame that somehow they didn't use her more.
I mean, no, I agree. I think that she's caliber, and having a bit of caliber in there was good. And I thought it was bold to kill her off in the first episode.
I know.
I kind of sensed that she'd be back, and she was, which was good.
Yeah. No, absolutely. The other one I was really disappointed that we didn't see more of was Kelnaka. I like the idea of there being a big Wookiee Jedi,
with a shaved head.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah. I love that little touch.
Yeah, and we didn't see how he died. I thought that was a real shame. And they could have. I think that was something that was a potential that they didn't quite maximize. And yes, we saw him fighting the others because he got controlled.
That was fantastic.
It was good.
That was good as well. Yeah,
them fight.
Yeah.
But I think we all love Chewbacca, don't we? He's like one of the sacred characters of Star Wars, and I actually thought they did this Wookiee pretty well. Some of the other Wookiees I've seen are a bit ropey in their design.
They make them too. They personify them too much, don't they? They try and make them have too much character. But Kelnaka, he was just in the background. He was cool. He didn't really want anything to do with it. He's a fiddler, like all like Chewie, and it was. I thought that was great.
Yeah, just a shame he wasn't in it a bit more.
Interestingly, I think sometimes you can play a character too much. I think it's good, and and we think Jackie Long is also a great character, and they all die, but we all want them back. So it says to me that there's good characters there that we want to see more of.
Yes.
I can't say that about a lot of series that that they have this good supporting cast, and that you want to see more of them. That for me is a good thing. If you overplay it too much, then that can become a problem. But
no, exactly. And I think there's characters from other series that when they've killed them off, you wanted to see more of them, and it was really gutting. I always think of Game of Thrones and the Viper, who when he fights the Mountain.
Yes.
I always thought that was such a good character, and it was such a shame that he got killed, so quickly in his storyline. But I think it's the same with these. I think the latter part of the series didn't quite hold.
I thought Chimera. I thought he was good.
Yeah,
I did think he was good, and I thought that he was obviously having to portray a tricky character, so he was having to play different roles within that character. And I thought he was good as a shopkeeper, and I thought he was good when he became the Sith, and then I thought it was interesting how he kept his promise. You know, that he wouldn't get in the way of May doing her thing. You know, at the end, and I just thought that his character arc seemed natural. Okay, the naked bathing was unnecessary, but I did think that I thought the actor Manny Jacinto, I thought he did a good job, and he will be good in the next show.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. I just thought it was a shame I wasn't as sold on the May character, Anosha character. I think that was just the shame for me. But
she just really didn't have the caliber to carry that part off in my mind. It's a real shame. At times she's okay, but at other times she seems out of her depth.
Yeah,
and it's not necessarily bad acting; it's a lack of acting in some of the sections for me. She's a bit sort of wooden, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But no, you tend to get that with a lot of things. There's one actor that doesn't quite match the caliber of the other actors, and unfortunately, it was Amandla.
It stands out a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. Unfortunately, because she's got the look. Apart from the hair, I didn't like the hair, but she's got the look, and I think she could. But shame.
Another thing that I thought was good was, I mean, we talked about budget before. They'd spent a lot of money on this series, which you could tell, partly because there was a lot of good sets. There was a lot of good props.
Good sets.
There was a lot of things there that we thought, hang on, this looks more like original Star Wars.
Old Republic type sets.
Yeah.
Which were fascinating. The padding, the color schemes.
Yeah,
it had a rougher feel to some of it. Some of the spaceships I quite liked.
There was a lot of different locations, wasn't there?
Yeah.
There was a lot of different ships. There were a lot of different sort of places they went. It was good in that respect because you didn't feel like you were just stuck on one ship and following one expert. But they'd obviously built a few. I don't know how much of it was done in the volume and that side of things, but I mean some of the props were really good. I mean the helmet that Chimera was wearing was a good prop. We didn't see many I know they were using a lot of lightsabers, but there wasn't many close-ups of the lightsabers and things, was there? Only a little bit.
There's a bit where he broke the lightsaber in two.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
but that was a direct reference to the samurai and having the shorter sword for the
wakizashi.
The suicide sword that they would have. And again, a little nod again to the traditional design of Star Wars and their reference to samurai warriors. Darth Vader's helmet.
Yeah.
So I love little nods all the time.
Yeah.
Towards the original Star Wars film.
Yeah.
And I think that it was a difficult thing to do with the set stuff. It could have been easier if they like they did with Obi-Wan. They tried to do a lot of dark scenes, didn't they?
Yeah.
With this, it's all lit. It's really well presented, and you're kind of like, this is the history. This is what it.
And there was a lot
like.
of them being on location as well. There was bits where they were exploring. They were walking down big hillsides, and they looked like they were gone somewhere nice to film it. Lucky bastards. But
Well, I mean, you think of Lord of the Rings and New Zealand, don't you? And
the
style.
It had that sort of little bit of a feel, didn't it, when they started their sort of exploration to try and find them. But so I mean that was good. We when we reviewed Andor, that was one thing we really liked about Andor as well. They produced some good sets. There was a whole
it felt more cinematic.
More real, and they can get too carried away with green screen, and even the volume at times. I think that's got its uses, and it's really good when you use it really well. But sometimes it can just stand out as being, they're just obviously standing in the volume again. So I think that's good to know.
Oh, and the street scenes were great.
There was a few good street scenes
and the shops they went into.
They
were obviously quite big because they had to have them some of the scenes were shot quite far back. So they had quite big sets. I thought that was impressive. There was a narrative within the environment that played a part.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
so
that's great. That was great. That was a really good aspect of it.
mm,
Okay, so the final point was actually slightly different to some of the other. It was more that there was potential with this series. You know, we could see that this
yeah,
could have, although we feel they might not have quite lived up to the full potential, there was definitely potential with the concept of it when it was
yeah,
based. You know, this story of, you know, the Sith starting to come out and, you
yeah,
know, a cover up and trying to deal with all that side of things. I think it has got potential for a second series. You know, it could be
yeah,
taken
definitely.
forward.
Hopefully it will be. Hopefully it will
Yeah,
be. They've obviously spent a lot of money on it, and who is it? Darth, not Darth Sidious. It's Darth. What's
Pla
the other?
Plagueis.
Darth Plagueis.
Yes.
Clearly, within it,
Yeah.
there's actually not just the cave scene, but you hear his voice at different points, especially
All right.
when May,
I hadn't noticed that.
yeah, May puts the helmet on, goes into that
Oh
dark.
yeah, yeah.
So there's Darth. Um,
You think that was him talking to her to try and?
there was his voice in the background.
Oh, I didn't. I've missed
Yeah,
that. So I need
yeah.
to go back and
So
see that.
there's
That's
a
interesting.
there are little connections there. So
Yeah.
it is, and I think that something we meant to talk about, which we didn't have, unfortunately, was
Yeah.
the role that the council, the Senate,
Yes.
and the formation of the Jedi,
Yeah.
the Jedi's role within the Senate.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that is what this is what this is all about. This show is about, and I think that's a really interesting way to lead us into the new series. How does the Jedi get involved with the Senate? What weaknesses do they expose? And it is the fact that the Jedi have weaknesses. It is the fact that they
Hmm.
are human in a sense, and that they have faults. And
Yes.
I think that that's important to take forward into into this next episode. I think
Definitely.
that's a really important thing to bear in mind. I'm fascinated to see how this is going to infiltrate the Jedi, and how's that going to work? How can she cover up?
Yes.
How can Vanessa cover up this
Yeah.
corruption
Yeah.
within the Jedi? How is that going to appear?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's clearly going to be one of the strong storylines within the next
Yes,
series.
yeah, definitely,
You know,
definitely. It will also be interesting because they did lose a lot of the characters, so it gives the opportunity for more different characters to come in, and that
yeah,
could help to change the plot line a bit or develop it in a better way.
yeah.
You know, there are some weaknesses within this show. We've said that, but you know, as we've highlighted here with these 5 points, there are some good points as well.
I think this is telling an interesting story that people don't want to hear because it threatens their sensibilities when it comes to what is the
Yeah,
foundation of the Jedi. But
yeah,
the
yeah,
reality of it is, people like Darth Vader came into existence for a reason, and we are trying to actually find out what that is and where that comes from. So that's what I'm saying. Anyway, I think there's another thing as well that I want to point out, and that is the role of Darth Plagueis in this. And I personally think that Kai Mia is his character is raw and untamed, and it strikes me that potentially Oshi is going to be potentially Plagueis's acolyte and not Kai Mia's.
Ah, interesting,
And that
interesting.
this is going to play out that Plagueis is going to follow them, or get somehow he's going to recognize the power
Yeah.
in Oshi, and then
Take her as his
potentially,
apprentice. Yeah.
yeah, there's things
Yeah.
looming that could be
It, it
interesting.
it was, yeah, the dynamic when Oshi suddenly started to feel like her power was there, the dynamic between her and him was different, wasn't it? When they
Yeah,
said let's go together and do this, she was very controlling and feeling, I was almost feeling like perhaps she will become like the master and he will
yeah,
become like the, you know, not the student, but do you know what I mean? Her underling, you know.
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought I thought that was, I know what you mean, but obviously that Plagueis. All I really know about Darth Plagueis was the sort of
Mm,
bit that you saw in the prequels
mm.
from, you know, Palpatine.
Yeah.
when he was talking about the tragedy of Plagueis and all that sort of thing. So, yeah,
Yeah. He
there's
had special powers, and it could potentially this divergent or whatever this power thing that this
yeah,
force could be something to do with how Plagueis gets his power or learns to manipulate the force,
yeah, yeah,
because he can apparently alter the midichlorians to create life.
right,
Now,
okay,
weirdly, the mother created the two
yes,
girls,
yeah, yeah,
created life out of the force. Maybe
mm,
there's some connection there. And I think
yes,
that there are lots of things, lots of little ins and maybe loose ends that could come together to make more sense in the second season. So I'm quite excited about, seeing what they do with it,
yeah.
and as you say, what new characters they can bring into this.
Yeah, well, I mean, they did kill quite a few of
Yeah.
the first lot, you know.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, I mean, I think one thing I did feel was perhaps we don't want too much Yoda. You know,
Definitely.
I think that should just have been, she goes and talks to him and that's it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of comments on even on the comments of our last video
Mm.
of people saying, Yoda, why didn't he know this? Is he incompetent and all this sort of thing? And at this point in time, we don't actually know what Yoda was
No.
feeling. We don't know whether he was aware or not. He could well have been. And this all happened over a short period of time, didn't
Really
it? The
did.
whole
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to say that he couldn't have been aware and was just waiting to address it and or was busy with something else. There could have been
Yeah.
another major emergency going on for all we know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think there's things like that when some of the comments and things that I sort of think, look, wait until you hear him talk. He may say, I know what's going on.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is difficult to say at this point, but what definitely has revealed itself for me has been an interesting story about this new force power that
Yeah.
has manifested in these
Yeah.
two girls, and the kind of the corruption of the Jedi Order and how that
Yeah.
is going to
There were
feed into
definitely
creating
there's definitely things from
things.
the series that you can draw from it that have been entertaining. It's
Yeah,
not completely unwatchable.
no.
Yes, there's some funny from bits which aren't as good. And for me, I thought there was a few filler episodes. Some of the storylines sometimes meandered a bit and went a bit weird.
Anyway, I mean, look, I mean that as I said before, I think that a lot of series have that.
Yes. Yeah,
So
yeah,
I don't think
definitely.
I think that the strong points stand on their own. I think
Yeah, yeah.
they make this a better series than a lot of people are saying, to be honest.
Yes. Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. That's good.
Mm.
Okay, well, thanks very much for joining us today. If you like what we're saying, obviously, please subscribe and add a comment. Like we said, we got some good comments on the last video. We'd love to hear some more from you guys. So let us know what you think. Otherwise, we'll see you again soon.